content is brought to you by Algorand, which is the official sponsor of the Thinking Crypto channel and podcast. Algorand is building the technology to power the future of finance, the convergence of traditional and decentralized models into a unified system that is inclusive, frictionless, and secure. It is founded by Turing Award-winning cryptographer Silvio Micali. Algorand has developed a blockchain infrastructure that offers the interoperability and capacity to handle the volume of transactions needed for DeFi, financial institutions, and governments to smoothly transition into FutureFi. The technology of choice for more than 700 global organizations, Algorand is enabling the simple creation of next-generation financial products, protocols, and exchange of value. For more information, please visit algorand.com.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Thinking Crypto channel, your home for cryptocurrency news and interviews. With me today is Jason Les, who's the CEO of Riot Blockchain. Jason, great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
I am excited to speak to you because Riot and Whinstone, you guys have the largest Bitcoin mining facility in North America and possibly the world. I'll let you, let me know about that. But, let's start with your background. Where are you from and where did you grow up?
Sure. So my name, as you introduced, my name is Jason Les, CEO of Riot Blockchain. Been with Riot for about 4 years, was previously on the board of directors for a number of years. I come from Orange County, California, born and raised, went to school here, went to UC Irvine to study computer science. I was knew I wanted to be in computer science my entire life. And then I got to college, university, and started studying, and I discovered the world of internet poker. And while I still completed my degree, I launched a career playing poker, primarily on the internet professionally, for about 13, 14 years. So that was very exciting. I think gives me a unique background. It is also what got me exposed to Bitcoin. The internet poker community kind of served as a group of really a bunch of the earliest adopters of Bitcoin because we were using it to move money around, deposit money on and off site, store money long before Bitcoin really became mainstream. So getting exposed to Bitcoin kind of just through naturally using it got me more and more interested to the point where I just didn't want to do poker anymore. I just wanted to do Bitcoin stuff. I didn't have aspirations of getting a job in Bitcoin. I just kind of stopped playing poker, and I studied Bitcoin all the time, and I started mining, doing software development, tapping back into the computer science days, and that was that. And then, through just, I think, focusing on the industry and through trying to develop an expertise in the industry, I found my way onto Riot's advisory board back in 2017 when Riot first started publicly trading through a reverse merger. And then I soon thereafter joined the board of directors, and here I am today.
Wow. So I'm assuming it's safe to say that you have Bitcoin in your crypto portfolio. Do you have any other cryptocurrencies or NFTs or anything like that?
I'm 100% Bitcoin.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about Riot. I want to learn as much as I can because just in full disclosure, I have bought some of the stock. You guys have the biggest mining facility, and that interests me a lot. Give us a history about Riot, how it came about, and your mining facilities and your vision, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, so Riot started in 2017. Bitcoin mining was the focus of Riot kind of right off the bat, but it was involved in a bunch of other things. It had investments in different areas in the space. Was looking to launch an exchange, etc. And over time, we decided we wanted to narrow in on specifically Bitcoin and specifically Bitcoin mining. We're all united in our shared vision on the long-term value proposition of Bitcoin, how dramatic and disruptive of an effect we see Bitcoin having. And we wanted to, get exposed to that as much as possible. And because we had been mining from our inception, we decided we were going to, cut off everything else that was going on within the company and focus on building out our mining operations as rapidly as possible. So Riot, starting in early 2018, had a Bitcoin mining facility in Oklahoma City that was about 12 megawatts, which sounds really small now, but back then seemed pretty big. So it just goes to show you how much the industry kind of evolves. So we were operating there, and then in mid 2020, we decided we wanted to make a shift to lower our cost of production and give us the ability to expand while we were out there looking for some crown jewel infrastructure to acquire and own. We believe, along with most of the rest of the industry, that vertical integration is the future. This is the way all, successful miners tend to be trending. And we wanted to take further control of our own destiny while we went out and so we went out trying to find infrastructure to build or acquire. And so while we were doing that, we were deploying miners at a hosting facility called CoinMint in upstate New York. They have low cost power, ideal operating temperatures, and it was an improved cost of production for us over Oklahoma City, and a huge ability to expand. So that allowed us to start entering into massive purchase agreements with Bitmain, ordering thousands, tens of thousands of the latest generation S19s, and we could get those deployed at CoinMint while we were kind of working on the next step of the company. And that's where Whinstone came in. We acquired Whinstone and we closed that transaction in May of 2021, so just this year. Whinstone has been absolutely transformative to the company. And I knew it would be that the very first day we met the Whinstone team. The very first day I walked in there and I met Chad, and I met Lyle, and Ashton, and David, and the rest of the whole Whinstone family they have there. I knew these people are aligned with our values, and these people want to build and grow as quickly and aggressively as we do. So it was an immediate kind of personality match between our two teams. And I think on top of that, all the infrastructure and capacity they have there was just a benefit. They had built out 300 megawatts but at the time that we had acquired them, and that site has the ability to expand to 750 megawatts. So quite a bit bigger than 12 megawatts. I'm pretty confident 300 megawatts makes Whinstone the largest Bitcoin mining facility in North America. The rest of the world, kind of hard to know. I think with mining leading China, definitely moved Whinstone up on the worldwide ladder. I don't know for sure, but I think we're certainly positioned well with the expansion we initiated right after the acquisition of Whinstone. We initiated a 400 megawatt expansion to take that up to 700 megawatts, and 200 megawatts of that is immersion cooling. So very aggressively building out capacity. Capacity is in very short supply. I think that's something that a lot of other miners are struggling with. It's an advantage we have. And we're really excited about the future we're building out there at Whinstone.
Yeah, I see the photos and I'm just blown away. I see them on Twitter following you guys, and it's like, wow, these massive facilities. And it looks like a few football fields of just buildings. And it's just amazing to see that happening in the United States. Tell us about, when did Riot go public and become a publicly traded company?
Riot went public in 2017. So a little over 4 years trading on NASDAQ. Riot was conceived and then reverse merged into an entity that was already trading on NASDAQ in late 2017. So we're about a little over 4 years into the game now. We started really just kind of, I guess, depending on how you define the bull market of 2017, kind of right in the middle or right at the end is when Riot first started. And just to step back a little bit to what you said, talking about how massive it is, I think people should look at that and use that as a visualization of how mainstream Bitcoin is coming. Like, we have massive industrial scale mining facilities now. We have home operations too. We have medium and small operations as well in Bitcoin, which is great because that shows the decentralization of Bitcoin. But at least the large scale operators, like, it has really reached a tremendous scale. And I think that says something about the level of adoption and the level that Bitcoin has risen to, through all the growth it's experienced.
Now, speaking of the growth, you guys recently got a $600 million equity capital raise. Can you tell us about that, who participated, and how the funds will be used?
So that was a at the market offering program, where a program that Riot, other Bitcoin miners, has implemented in the past, where you essentially have a bank who is selling stock into the open market at based on the instructions that you give the bank. So through our recent offering that was led by Cantor Fitzgerald, we had another number of other sales agents in that as well. BTIG, Roth, Compass Point, and I'm blanking on one last name. BTIG, Compass Point, Roth, Cantor. It'll come to me. And so those were the sales agents, and that was at the market offering program, selling stock into the market to raise that to raise capital through equity financing. So we completed that during the fourth quarter. We announced when we filed our 10Q for the third quarter that the at the market offering program has been completed. So that was a good chunk of 600 million cash that we added to our balance sheet.
Wow. Can you tell us a bit about how many Bitcoin you're mining per day, and also the type of energy or electricity you're using? Because I know there's been a movement and a push towards more renewable energy, and I know a lot of Bitcoin miners are already using renewable energy. Tell us about that. Once again, the amount mined per day, and then the type of energy you're using.
So we're giving monthly updates on the amount of Bitcoin that we mine. In November, we mined 466 Bitcoin, which we're very, very proud of. You know, all the miners that put out monthly updates, that was the leading production amount for November. So that equates to about 15.5 Bitcoin per day. In December, you know, we'll give a monthly update at the start of January for what our December results were. Obviously, there's been an increase in difficulty over this month, but you know, we're in there deploying miners and fighting, so hoping to put up a good December number as well. Regarding your question on the energy makeup, so Whinstone is a part of the ERCOT grid. That means we're taking in all the different generation sources that make up ERCOT. ERCOT is interesting because, well, one, it's a deregulated power market. So you have all these different generation sources kind of competing in a more open and free market for energy. Texas, so ERCOT is the energy market that covers about 90% of Texas. And it's an island within Texas. It's not selling to the kind of other states. So you have this 90% of Texas is in this energy island within its borders. Texas is the largest state for wind power production, in the United States. And it is on its way, I think, to be one of the leaders in solar generation as well. Solar generation has become, you know, less, I should say, more inexpensive over time to produce. And the market conditions in ERCOT make it an ideal environment for that type of, for generators to build there. So I think, you know, we'll wait to see the year-end report on ERCOT generation, but kind of rough figures, ERCOT is about 50% natural gas. It's about 25% wind. And solar used to kind of not even be on the map for ERCOT generation. And in 2021, it's been hovering around 4%. So pretty, you know, significant buildup there. Coal, it seems to have gone down year over year. It was previously about 16%. Now it's around 13%. And then a number of other music generation sources. But there's certainly a lot of wind and solar generation in construction in ERCOT.
I know, if I'm not mistaken, I think I read that you guys were part of the Bitcoin Mining Council with the whole Elon ESG thing and Michael Saylor. Is that correct? And what conversations have you had with Elon and Michael Saylor?
Yeah, so Riot was or is in the Bitcoin Mining Council along with a ton of other Bitcoin miners now. Basically, the inception of this kind of idea was looking at all the FUD negative news that was coming out around Bitcoin mining back in spring of 2021, spring of this year. A lot of negative news around, you know, the power, misleading information, I should say, around the power consumption of Bitcoin mining and its generation sources, et cetera, et cetera. So we wanted to kind of make an industry effort to publish data about this. So there was a new data source to kind of refute these negative claims. The fact is Bitcoin mining uses more renewable energy than really any other major industry on the planet. And that's because Bitcoin mining is indifferent to the location and the time of day it's operating at. So it's kind of out there finding surplus energy, which you typically find isolated surplus areas of renewable generation that cannot be delivered, or there's not enough demand for wherever it's produced. And also Bitcoin mining, you really want to put in perspective how much energy it's using of everything. You hear these comparisons that like, oh, Bitcoin mining uses as much energy as Argentina. Okay, maybe, but Argentina also doesn't use that much energy. I think one of the better ways to look at Bitcoin mining is how much of unused energy does it take up? Something that a lot of people maybe don't know is that Bitcoin mining, I should say energy that's produced, about 1/3 of produced energy is wasted. It is just lost in transmission and there's no one to buy it.
Right.
About 1/3. And of that 1/3, Bitcoin mining uses about 0.2%. So when you put it in that kind of perspective, you see that we are really going after surplus energy, and we're even taking a small part of that. But to tie back to your question, we did have the opportunity to talk with Elon Musk as a part of the kind of this council idea coming together. And it was a great conversation because we were really just delivering the message that I was just delivering to you. Hey, we see, kind of basically talking to Elon saying, hey, we see you've an interest in Bitcoin mining, you're talking about this energy use. These are some facts and figures you might be interested in. And his response is basically like, this is really interesting. You guys should, try to get this out there more because there's a lot of talk about this. And so that's how the Bitcoin Mining Council came forward. Hey, we want to come forward. We want industry participants, everyone to come together, and we're going to collect this data and we're going to make that public, and the public can do what it wants with that data.
Yeah, I think, obviously I've researched a lot. I own Bitcoin. I'm bullish on Bitcoin. And I do see a lot of these headlines, like you said, like Bitcoin uses more energy than blah, 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 Argentina, yada, yada, right? But it's like, okay, so does your Christmas lights. And
yeah, Christmas lights, how much does Facebook use? How much does, all these different things use? Right. It's kind of the double-edged sword with transparency. Bitcoin is completely transparent. You know everything that's going on. You can measure all these figures. So it's very easy to come up with an estimation of how much energy Bitcoin mining is using. You don't have that same type of transparency with Christmas lights to quickly come up with, oh, can we go look up how much energy Christmas lights are using? And I'll say the other, you're going off of these negative headlines we see. The most misleading and frustrating one that I see all the time is how much a Bitcoin transaction uses. So for your viewers that don't know, Bitcoin transactions use a negligible amount of energy. There's not an energy payload for Bitcoin transactions. I think there's been some politicians that try to come out with, oh, each Bitcoin transaction uses more energy than an entire household in a year. Bitcoin's energy consumption comes from its consensus system. Bitcoin mining is how all the participants of the Bitcoin network all over the globe agree on the valid state of the blockchain without having to trust each other. It is not generating transactions. So just wanted to clear that up. Transactions do not have an energy payload. Bitcoin consensus uses energy to drive a trustless consensus system.
Yeah, and I appreciate you clarifying that and providing that information, because there are a lot of misconceptions. And look, in the crypto market, there is a lot of tribalism, and people grab onto anything they can, or if you want to call it FUD, and then they start tweeting about it, and then it becomes a truth, even though it's not. It's so funny how it happens like that in this asset class. But have you guys had recent meetings, the Bitcoin Mining Council, or was it just the main one that happened earlier this year with Elon, or have there been other meetings with Elon and the other folks?
No other meetings with Elon, but the Bitcoin Mining Council does do a quarterly public presentation. At the end of each quarter, they kind of do a new collection of data and make a little short presentation to give to the public and take questions. So that's been, I think, a very productive practice that's taken place. And I'm sure there'll be one, after the fourth quarter ends here in about a week or so.
Now, obviously, Riot and Whinstone, the main operations are in Texas. Are there plans to expand to other states and possibly into international territories?
There's no plans. I would never say that anything's off the table. I would say right now, one of our key focuses has been in increasing the US footprint in Bitcoin mining. So we are a US company. We want to increase, because there's so much adoption of Bitcoin amongst users, businesses and institutions here in the United States. We believe that underlying consensus system, Bitcoin mining, should be in the same geographic location as well. We also believe that as Bitcoin grows and adoption is a more significant worldwide asset, it's actually going to become a national security priority for there to be Bitcoin mining within a certain state's borders. So, we're Americans. We want to help build up the American footprint, which has historically been, very low. And I think there's been tremendous strides made in those efforts this year, and we're going to see even more going forward. Right now, that Whinstone team, they are located in Texas. We have very great relationships with the different power companies and service providers there. So we're getting the most synergies and efficiencies out of focusing on Texas. It is also a very politically friendly environment. A lot of the leadership in Texas, all the way up to the governor's office, are very bullish on Bitcoin, and they want Texas to be a key locale for Bitcoin. So, regulatory risk is always a key risk in an emerging industry like Bitcoin. So we feel like that is, well mitigated in that type of political environment. So, regulatory wise, operational wise, it makes sense to focus in Texas for now, but who knows where the future will go.
Well, I'm certainly glad to see the Bitcoin mining boom happening in the United States. It's something I've talked about for years, where just in speculating that how big Bitcoin was going to be in the asset class. And obviously we're seeing the adoption on multiple fronts: corporates, hedge funds, everybody seems to want to hold Bitcoin now. And then China goes and bans Bitcoin mining, and then the miners spread around the world, decentralizing the hash rate. And it was great to see a lot of it come to the United States. So did you guys have Chinese miners come knocking your door, looking to maybe rent capacity? And are there companies renting capacity from you?
Yeah, there was a lot of interest in hosting from different Chinese companies, following the exodus of mining from China and earlier this year. We did not have, capacity available to them at that time. We currently we're hosting about 2 customers at Whinstone right now. One that's been very public is a company called Rhodium, which is in the process of IPOing themselves. We have started an expansion, and we haven't fully decided how we want to utilize all of that capacity yet. So we are in the hosting business. That is a part of Riot's business as well. We haven't onboarded any of those kind of Chinese miners that you're referencing for hosting yet. So it's kind of all in the works. We're evaluating our options, and we'll make decisions when the time comes.
I wonder if you can talk about a bit about the impact on the local economy, because obviously the Bitcoin mining industry, it's a business. You're hiring people, you're generating. You have to pay taxes and all that, right? People are earning a living. What's been the impact of the locale in Texas and on the local economy there?
Yeah, so Whinstone is located in Rockdale, Texas, which was previously a town really focused around an Alcoa aluminum smelting plant, as well as a generation facility that was there as well. And when those shut down in 2005, 2008, that really decimated that community. It's a more remote location, and without those major businesses there, the major employers of the region were lost. So Whinstone came in, and I think this is very important for Bitcoin miners. They partnered with the community from inception. They didn't come in and do their own thing and then knock on the community's door later. From the very beginning, Whinstone was focused on working with the community to achieve their goals. And they've been very successful at that. When you support the community supports you back as well. Whinstone employs approximately 160 people now. That makes them the biggest employer in the county that they're in. And that's just direct jobs. Doesn't say anything about the indirect employment opportunities that come from a result of the different services that are needed to support all of that. So we are a major employer in that region, and we're growing and growing. Whinstone has also given back to the community in a number of other ways. They sponsor a lot of community events. They build structures and services for the community, a number of donations. I think they have had a terrific social impact, and it's a model of how Bitcoin miners should work with the population, the community that they develop in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just excited to see that because, there's a lot of FUD and a lot of politics at play here. There's certain members, I won't name names, but in Congress, they go out and they spread a lot of FUD and they said a lot of things. But I just see this huge opportunity that this technology, Bitcoin and just crypto as a whole, can benefit the US and in creating jobs and generating tax revenue, all these things. I'm just glad to see this happening and the impact it's having there in the local economy.
Yeah, it's really great. And I think what's also great about it is it creates such a wide variety of jobs too. It's not just like these super high tech jobs that the community, if they don't have the expertise already built in, they're not going to be able to participate in. Bitcoin mining is a building game. We are building things. We're building structures. We're building, electrical infrastructure. We're building all sorts of infrastructure. And that requires the same type of skill sets you see in a lot of other industries. So you are able to find individuals' employment from your local community, even if those people aren't, cutting edge computer scientists.
Sure. I had a question. I'm very curious about this. And I don't know how much you can disclose, but I'll ask the question anyway. The Bitcoin that you guys are mining, I've been seeing a lot of miners are holding on to the Bitcoin. And I'm curious, are you guys doing that, or are you selling some of it? Obviously, you have operating costs, you have overhead costs, so you're running a business. What's happening to the Bitcoin that you're mining? Are you holding on to it, or are you selling some of it? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so through everything we've reported through this year, Riot has held on to the Bitcoin that it's mined. We had not sold any Bitcoin in 2021. In 2020, we made a few discretionary sales here and there, kind of for balance sheet management purposes. But the strategy lately has been to hold on to Bitcoin as much as possible. Like I said earlier, we are big long-term believers in Bitcoin. We want exposure to Bitcoin. So that has kind of driven that strategy. I can't say for sure that will always be the case. We do have, operating expenses. We do have capital expenses. There could be a time in the future where, it's called for to sell Bitcoin. But as of lately, we have been holding on to everything we've mined, and we've been accumulating a pretty good stash of Bitcoin.
So my next question in conjunction to that is going to be, is it because you're anticipating higher prices coming this market cycle? I don't know if you can answer that, but and not financial investment advice, to preface this question, but is it because you're anticipating higher prices?
Well, I mean, so let me answer it this way. An important part, I think, of being a Bitcoin holder is having a low tide preference, meaning that you have a very long-term outlook on the future of Bitcoin. So, with that in mind, yes, I believe that there is, great future opportunity in Bitcoin. in general, we're not trying to play the market though. We're not, trying to trade. We're not, holding on to Bitcoin or selling Bitcoin because certain things we think are going to happen with the price. We're making those decisions, I think, generally with a very long-term outlook in mind.
And also, regardless of the price, we're seeing a demand for Bitcoin because of the rampant inflation we're seeing, right? The money printing that's happening. Is it also, part of the strategy to hold is because, demand is going to surge. Once again, irrespective of price, is going to surge from like corporates, let's say Apple or Google or somebody are like, oh my gosh, our cash is getting depleted, right? And they do what Tesla did, and they do what Michael Saylor did with MicroStrategy. Could they come knocking your door, sell us some of your Bitcoin? Is that kind of the strategy too?
I think that, I think more broadly, the fact that Bitcoin has a limited supply and as it grows in adoption, that should increase the value of Bitcoin. So, we're at close to around 90% of all Bitcoin ever is mined. So that's, there's only like 2 million coins left to be mined over the next 120 years or so. And most of those will be mined in the next 10 years, actually. So the supply of Bitcoin is really being eaten up. And as, you talk about large buyers, if a company like Apple wanted to start putting its cash reserves into Bitcoin, it's going off of a very limited supply of Bitcoin out there now to do that, which should have a bullish effect. So our strategy for holding Bitcoin isn't because we necessarily plan to sell to a specific, buyer in the future, but I think generally goes alongside with this longer term bullish view of Bitcoin and the idea that this is a very scarce asset, and as adoption increases, there's not going to be so much going around for people to buy.
Right. And I want to get your thoughts on what El Salvador is doing. They made Bitcoin a legal tender. They're going to mine some Bitcoin with the volcanic energy. What are your thoughts on that? And do you see other countries maybe following that model?
Yeah, I think countries or, energy generators who have excess energy, it makes sense for them to monetize that with Bitcoin mining. Bitcoin mining is this flexible tool that we have not seen at this type of scale before, that can really go anywhere, use power, and it has the flexibility to shut off if for some reason, that power has higher demand somewhere else at a certain time of the day. So I think Bitcoin mining is going to proliferate all over the world and capture all the excess energy, or be a part of capturing excess energy all over the world, and is going to fit into every country, every generation's power strategy over the long term. It doesn't make sense to have energy that's unused. If you have Bitcoin mining as a tool in your tool chest, then it makes sense to use that to capture unused energy. So it's incredible to see what's been done there. And I think we are going to continue to see that all over the world as, adoption continues to go on. They kind of El Salvador kind of is a first example that other states, other nations can then see, and then they'll emulate when they see the success that El Salvador has had.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we're hearing different statements and dialogue happening here in the United States, that is hinting towards like major banks being able to hold Bitcoin if they're not already. I think the head of the FDIC was talking about it being able to provide the insurance coverage for banks to hold Bitcoin and crypto. And also the Fed Chair Powell said there's no plans to ban Bitcoin. So there's almost this green light, despite all of the lack of full crypto regulations from DC. How are you guys looking at all these things happening? Because it's kind of a bit confusing at times. It's some mixed messages, but yet there's adoption happening despite DC not, getting their ducks in a row.
Yeah, I think it's important for the industry to come together and help advocate on behalf of Bitcoin and help educate lawmakers and the public on Bitcoin. So one of the things that we're supporting is an advocacy group called Sat Center that was launched a couple of weeks ago. And Sat Center is about getting in front of lawmakers, getting in front of policymakers, and the public in general, and helping educate them on Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining. We believe that it is the lack of information, the lack of education on the topic that is the biggest struggle. If you truly understand Bitcoin and if you truly understand its implications, I think it's very difficult to be against it unless you have maybe some type of self-serving motive. Bitcoin is an incredible tool for human freedom. So anyone who fully understands that and the properties that drive that, I think should be very supportive of Bitcoin. So we think education is the name of the game here. We need to educate people. We need to disperse the FUD and these different headlines that you and I were talking about earlier that kind of get cemented in people's brain. We need to explain why Bitcoin works the way it does, what goes into driving these valuable properties, and that through that, we can get more supportive and reasonable regulation and laws surrounding Bitcoin. So I think there's a number of groups that are working on these efforts as well, and I think it's something the entire industry needs to come together on to help get the good word out there on.
Yeah, absolutely. What are your thoughts on scaling solutions like Lightning Network to help improve the day-to-day usage of Bitcoin? Like, I believe Bitcoin is a great hedge against inflation, great store of value. And that's how I hold it. But eventually, as the price goes up, you'll be spending Satoshis, right? Where it makes sense. What are your thoughts on layer 2 solutions like Lightning Network to help boost adoption?
I think Lightning is terrific. And I think Lightning is, for people that don't know, the concept of the Lightning Network was conceived very early on in Bitcoin development. The very first, people that were working on Bitcoin development, talking about the future, it was not believed that the main chain would be the medium for all transactions going forward. The fact is that every block has a limited data space, therefore it can only hold a limited amount of transactions. And that's what drives a transaction fee market for Bitcoin transactions, which is, I'll add, important to the security of the Bitcoin network for incentivizing miners when this block reward runs out over the next 100 or so years, particularly over the next 10 years. So that level of security that you get with that main chain is not one that you need for a Starbucks transaction. You do not need the $1 trillion network securing your $3 cup of coffee. And so for these lower value transactions, that's where Lightning Network makes a ton of sense. It is much cheaper, it is much quicker, and it also provides very, very good security. So I think the future is going to be more common transactions using something like Lightning and more high value transactions that need the full security of the network. If you're buying a house, for example, that when that day in the future comes, then you want the security of the main chain. So it makes sense to pay a little more of a transaction fee to do that and wait for several blocks to pass to get the finality of your transaction in there. So I think Lightning is one of many second layer technologies that we're going to see in Bitcoin. And it's been very exciting for me to see how Lightning has organically taken off over the past few years. It was not so easy to use in the beginning because, like everything in Bitcoin, development has been open and, initial versions were out there for people to use. Was not super user-friendly in the beginning, but just like the internet, over time, more and more consumer-friendly products have been made around it. More and more friendly user interfaces have been made around Lightning. And I think it's becoming more and more viable of an option for everyone. And that's why we're seeing, Lightning continue to proliferate around the world.
So I got a few more questions for you before we wrap it up. There's one question I've had in the back of my mind. I'm sure many of the listeners as well. when all Bitcoin have been mined, we're talking 100 over 100 years from now, will miners still be incentivized to process the transactions on the network? And once again, maybe there's a bit of ignorance on my part not knowing this, but I'm assuming fees will be generated and that's how they can operate after all Bitcoin have been mined.
Yeah, so what we've seen over the life cycle of Bitcoin is for the first several years of Bitcoin, transaction fees were basically next to nothing. There was not enough demand for block space to even drive much of a fee market for transactions. So fees are very low. Now, as adoption has increased, there has been a growing fee market around transactions. Basically, the higher fee you pay, the quicker, the higher likelihood you have of your transaction being included in the next block or a block soon thereafter. That fee market is what will drive incentive for miners going forward as the block reward decreases. That is the release of supply of new Bitcoin into the market slows down over the next 10, 100 years. So we've seen this happening already. Bitcoin fees were next to nothing, a few years ago, and now we're seeing Bitcoin fees, has been averages, I'd say around a quarter or a third of the Bitcoin per block, and has been as high as, I'm trying to think, what's the record transaction fees included in the block? I think there's been times when 1.5 Bitcoin in transaction fees have been in a block. And I think this is a trend that we'll see continue to grow over the years. And so those transaction fees will help offset that declining block reward over time. Now, initial reaction from some people might be, well, wait, that doesn't sound too good. I don't want my transactions to cost more, but don't forget about Lightning Network and other type of second layer technologies like that will have cheap transaction fees. So you don't need to rely on that main chain, and that chain can still have the security that Bitcoin requires.
Right. Well, I appreciate you clarifying that, because that is something I had that question. I don't think I've ever found the answer to it. So I appreciate that. What's on the roadmap for Riot in 2022? I don't know what you can share, but maybe any hints towards things coming up.
So I would say the major thing for the roadmap right now is execution. We are executing on the incredibly ambitious growth plans that we have set forth kind of through the second half of 2021 here. That 400 megawatt expansion, that immersion building started coming online. Our first immersion building, I should say, started coming online at the end of this year. And in 2022, we'll have a full 4 buildings being finalized and coming online through the first half of the year. Alongside that, we have entered into an array of purchase agreements with Bitmain, and we have tens of thousands of S19s that are being shipped and deployed over 2022. So it is now taking all of the growth plans, like I said, that have been announced and actually executing and getting miners mining. That's the name of the game here, right? It's not just buying miners. You want those miners deployed and mining you Bitcoin. And we have been working hard on all the steps necessary to get to that point where, building all the infrastructure. We just announced the acquisition of a company called ESS Metron, which is one of the key suppliers to Whinstone for electrical gear, electrical components. And that is helping us take control of our supply chain. So we've been working on all these different components to build the foundation for getting miners deployed and getting them deployed as quickly as possible. So, for now, that's what I can tell you about 2022. Executing, getting hash rate up, mining more Bitcoin.
It's exciting. And like I said, I follow you guys. I have this, I'm a stockholder, so excited to see and all these things come to fruition. I don't know if you can answer this question, but I have to ask, there are debates right now as to whether this bull cycle has ended or it's going to spill over into 2022. What are your thoughts there? And do you have a Bitcoin price prediction for this respective cycle?
I don't think I have. I don't have a Bitcoin price prediction for you. It's hard to say. We've really hovered around these levels for a long time. Historically, Bitcoin doesn't really reach new kind of high levels and then just stay there for a while and then go down. But history is not always the best prediction of the future. So, I mean, I can't say for sure that means something. I think that the foundations of Bitcoin adoption are here. So whether a bull market continues now or comes later on in the future, I feel pretty good about the bet I've made on Bitcoin. And I'm excited to see how it plays out.
All right, quick rapid fire questions to wrap it up. Favorite food?
Oh, wow. I guess it'd be for something pretty simple. If I had to pick something that I wanted to have for dinner right now, I'd probably just like, a good, nice piece of steak.
Can't go wrong with steak. Favorite musician or band?
Oh, wow. I'm not used to these kind of individual things. So historically, I've really been into hip hop, rap and hip hop. But lately, I just found myself listening to podcasts, like yours nonstop, because I'm just trying to follow as much on the industry as possible. So I'm not as much on top of music as I used to be. But I mean, historically, I was really into the whole Aftermath records and all the artists that came along with that group.
Oh yeah, for sure. Favorite movie?
I think Matrix was probably has been my favorite movie for some time. Sequels kind of lost it there a little bit for me. And actually, I think the new Matrix movie is out now. I heard I can watch it on HBO Max. So yeah. I haven't watched that yet, but the first Matrix I think would be my favorite movie.
Favorite book?
Favorite book is actually a poker book. It's not an instructional book, but it's a story. It's called, go real quick here. The Professor, the Banker, and the Suicide King. So this is based, it's actually, I shouldn't say based, it is a true story. This businessman came to Vegas and wanted to play all the poker pros at the highest stakes ever possible. And they just played outrageous. This guy was like new to poker and just showed up and then just started playing the biggest stakes possible. And for a while was winning. So it was a really cool story, a really interesting part of poker history.
Wow. And when you're not working at Riot, what are you doing for fun as a hobby?
Bitcoin is my hobby. I know it kind of goes hand in hand, but if I'm not doing Riot stuff, then I'm interested in what's going on in Bitcoin, kind of learning about that and following along. I'd say more of that kind of the computer science aspect of it. Like I said, that was my background. That's what I thought my future was going to be. That's what's fun for me. So I really enjoy that. I really enjoy just learning about Bitcoin and following what's going on in Bitcoin.
Jason, pleasure chatting with you. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.